Hello, everybody. How is everyone?
Pretty good. I just woke up. I took a chemistry test right before this, so.
Woohoo! You've often expressed in class how much you just absolutely love chemistry.
Yeah, I love it, but I also hate it.
Yeah.
It's one of those. It's not too bad though. It's just abstract sometimes.
Yeah. Is that part of your major, or is this just a general education course?
That is my major, yes, because
Is it
I
really?
just, yeah, I love science so much.
Oh,
Like,
very,
if I'm being honest, I've always loved doing it.
very cool. My daughter is really good at science and math, and which has me really excited, because then she could avoid the messiness of a career in humanities,
Oh yeah.
But she also really likes to write screenplays. She's a really big writer, creative writer, and so
okay.
And some days I'm like, just screw it, do what you love, go to Hollywood, write for movies and screenplays and do it. And then other days I'm sort of like, what do you know? Go into sciences, you can make money and be secure and safe. It really just depends on whether or not I've had enough caffeine that day.
The weird part about me is, like, I'll get obsessed with something. I have like an obsessive personality where, like, I get really into something and I won't stop diving into it and just researching stuff on my own. That's just how I am. So I don't know. I guess that kind of fits in.
My nephew went to he now has a full ride to he was a chemistry major, and now he is conducting research at LSU, and I mean, he makes more money than I do as a grad student, if that's any indication. He also lives in California, so that's part of it as well.
California, that's nice.
He's working on coming up with a chemical compound that will break down plastic waste in our oceans, and I'm like, I mean, talk about important work, you know what I mean? No, Zach, so he's the same as you. Like, he'll get into a lab situation and that's all he wants to do is figure out that next step in the procedure.
It'll be anything for me. For like a little bit, it was cooking. Like, I was obsessed with cooking for some reason.
I wish.
And then I got obsessed with like kind of crime scenes, how they do stuff. I actually watched this YouTube channel called The Infographic Show. So it's just a bunch of random historical facts or like stories, and I just listen to them and learn stuff. So I don't know, it's weird. I'm weird, but
that's so cool though. No, that's excellent. Keep that up your whole life, because those are the people who really, I think if you look at to any quote unquote genius, they're people who are not just good in one area of life, right? These are like Renaissance thinkers, Renaissance people, and so that's what you are. You're kind of a throwback, which is awesome.
Maybe.
You're a throwback. All right. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure if Madison is going to be able to join us to lead the discussion today. So definitely I'd love to hear what everyone is thinking about this novel and how incredibly crazy it is and strange and bizarre and what the hell is going on. So I'd love to have all of your feedback, and you can ask any questions at any point or make any comments or anything. I think Alexia is trying to join, but it's being a little cranky for her. So let's see if we can get her on. Hopefully Alexia's, okay, there she is. Okay, so the first character I want to talk about, none of the questions so far has surrounded Marie, but can we talk about Marie? Let's talk about the relationship that Meursault has with Marie, and talk about how, we discussed on Monday how Meursault is just so incredibly strange, right? And completely different from any other narrator we've had so far, because he doesn't quote unquote play the game. But let's describe how does he react to Marie? what ways does, his relationship with Marie seem to, I don't know, clarify? I mean, how did you guys read that particular interaction? What does that reveal about our good friend Mirso and his
I thought it
relationship?
was really strange because the way that Marie's described, she sounds like almost perfect. Like she's obsessed with him. She's like described as beautiful and charming, and like it seems like she would do anything for him. Like he tells her that he isn't in love with her, but then she like that makes her want him more, and he still like pushes her away. He describes other ladies as beautiful, like when they're just walking around, and like she doesn't seem to like that doesn't seem to like push her farther away. It's really strange, and I
Yeah.
don't understand what's going on with him.
Yeah, let's read that passage. Kyle, do you know where that page is when on page 35? She when she laughed, I wanted her again. So it's pretty clear that Mirso feels sexual attraction to Marie, right? It's a lot about grazing her breasts and that she's beautiful and that there's water dripping down, when they were swimming together. But it says here, a minute later, she asked me if I loved her. I told her it didn't mean anything, but that I didn't think so. She looked sad. But as we were fixing lunch and for no apparent reason, she laughed in such a way that I kissed her, right? So yeah, Kyle, like, well, as a man, Kyle, as and someone who's, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't ask you about your past romantic relationships, but at this point in a relationship, after presumably, they've had sex, they've slept together, typically, what would a man say in this situation? Can I even ask that question? I don't know.
I mean, I think that deep down inside he does love her, but he just won't let himself realize it, because when they get to like wherever they're vacationing at, he says like for the first time he thought he might get married. There is that one line, and that's why I thought like he might actually like deep down inside love her, but he just doesn't let himself feel anything.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is we've seen this before, that he's at his mother's funeral and he doesn't feel a whole lot. And then he's with Marie and he tells her he doesn't feel a whole lot. So maybe he's suppressing his feelings. Maybe the feelings are really there, but he doesn't want to examine them. He doesn't want to open up to them. Anybody else have a different read? Why at that moment he would tell her that he doesn't love her? And again, what would most men say in that situation, do you think?
So I think that he wouldn't say I love you. It's like so early. He doesn't know who she is basically at all outside of a sexual relationship. So I don't think he would say like I love you at all. I think as a guy he would say like, oh, you're beautiful, I like you, or something along those lines if he felt attraction outside of like sexual attraction. But I don't think he loves her at all. I mean, we can see that he doesn't really show emotion towards anyone. He doesn't cry when at his mother's funeral he wants to say, oh, I'm sorry, it's my fault, or something like that. So I don't think there's any love there from his end. He just sees her as like a sexual like person for him. And so he's okay. He's willing to accept her saying these things in order to get what he wants.
Right. Except that, does he really, I mean, George, I'm going to push back a little bit. Do you think he tells her he doesn't love her in order to get what he wants? Because I almost see it as the opposite. You know what I mean? Like most people at this point would say whatever they needed to get what they wanted from this person. And it seems like it would be pretty easy for him to lie and say, I feel more for you than I really do, but he doesn't. I mean, most of us will do that in this situation. If we've just had sex with somebody, and they're sticking around, they haven't left yet. Usually at some point, maybe we're like, we at least try to fake affection, or we will say, oh, I really like you. But what if the relationship for you on your end was truly purely sexual? Like maybe this, I absolutely agree with Kyle when he says he doesn't show much emotion. So the question we have to ask ourselves is it because he's denying the emotions that are really there? Or is it because he truly doesn't feel these things and he's not going to lie that he doesn't? Does that make sense? Like he doesn't miss his mom. He doesn't feel a loss for his mother. And he also doesn't pretend that he feels a loss for his mother. I mean, he'll go through the motions, but he's not going to do more than that. And it's almost the same with Marie, right? Like she's probably had played this dance before with other men, and she slept with them, and then she asked them, do you love me? And probably most of the time they'll be like, sure, or yeah, I really care about you, like hedging their bets a little bit, right, George? And Meursault doesn't do that. So George, let me let you respond.
So I think you make a really good point about how he's someone that like he won't lie for like the benefit of it. So I definitely think that there is no love. If he was, I agree with you that like most people would just in that situation say yes, I love you to get their intentions further. But
Right.
I agree with you that he doesn't love her whatsoever. So I think at one point he even says that like he's like, I don't think I would love you anyways, or something along those lines. Basically just telling her like, I don't love you. I don't think I'm going to love you. And so I think for him, his biggest trait is his honesty. He won't lie to her. And, to satisfy his ends, he definitely is just, he's being straightforward, and it's kind of like, it's interesting how like, she doesn't get angry about it. She laughs like she's intrigued.
Yeah.
That he's like, maybe
Yeah.
the person who's told him that before.
Don't worry. I'm going to get the women involved here in a minute. Like, okay, so why does Marie stay? You know what I mean? Like, what the hell? But George, yeah, it's really interesting to me because, again, if he were a person who was playing the game, his reaction to Marie would be to do whatever he could to try to manipulate her, right? Manipulation. Lies are a type of manipulation, right? If we are expressing more than we really feel, why are we doing that? Because we're trying to manipulate people or the situation to make our lives easier or simpler.
Can I add something?
Yeah, Nick, go.
So when we were learning about Sartre, we were learning about how if you live inauthentically, like basically you're denying like your own actions or your own responsibility and freedom. I think that Meursault doesn't want to live an authentic life. He wants to live an authentic life, so therefore he's honest with her. He doesn't cry about his mother because he wants to live that authentic life. He's not gonna lie. He doesn't want to live a life of lies or like how society wants him to live. He wants to live how he wants to live. So I think that's why he's brutally honest with her.
Yeah, and it's Nick, thank you. Like, you can read Meursault in so many different ways. You can read him as somebody who is deliberately suppressing his emotions, denying that he cares for Marie, that he does care for her, but he's trying to tap that down, that he does miss his mom, that he does care for her, but he's trying to suppress it. And there's plenty of evidence in the text to back up that, that interpretation. And then, of course, another equally valid interpretation is to say that he is just not going to lie, that he doesn't feel more than he feels. And even if it makes life easier and simpler, I mean, it would be simpler for him, would it not? At that point, he doesn't know how Marie's going to act. It would be so much simpler, especially if he likes to have sex with this woman, and he does, so much simpler for him to tell her what she wants to hear in order to keep the relationship going, and he can get what he wants, which is sexual pleasure. And yet, he's not mean or cruel to her in the sense that, he hurts her, or, apparently their sex is fine. He likes it. But he's not going to pretend that it's anything more than that, because right now it really isn't,
Yeah.
Which is so weird for us to think about. Like,
I also think like she's so intrigued by the fact that he doesn't like say that he loves her. He's like, I'm not gonna say that. Like, I don't think so. Is because like a lot of times, like especially in real life, a girl wants like being like a mysterious guy. Like they don't want to know everything that's going to happen. They almost want like a uncertainty, like a certain principle of uncertainty, because it always keeps them on their feet. So I feel like maybe that intrigues her because she's only used to guys chasing after her. Where Meursault is not really chasing after her. He's just kind of like, okay.
All right, women in class, do you agree? Do you think that many heterosexual women want intrigue, that's one of the reasons why Marie sticks around, because she's intrigued by his honesty. She's intrigued that he doesn't, quote unquote, play the game? What do you all think? Or do you think she's got something wrong with her is like masochistic and likes that kind of abuse. I'm gonna let the women speak up. None of the women want to speak up.
No, I'm just
Okay,
trying to
good.
like process because it really, really bothers me that she like sticks around. But like I understand what Nick's saying. Like some women do, they like want that chase. And the fact that he isn't chasing her, she's probably like, oh, what more can I do like to get him to like try to chase me?
Yeah, yeah, good. So maybe part of this is like she's intrigued, he's different. And it might be like this juxtaposition too, because he says, well, I don't love you, but he's treating her really well, you know, Brooke? So it's like usually, you know, we judge a person, you know, by their actions as much as by their words. And he's treating her really well. I mean, he seems to really like her. So for her, he might just be this like enigma. And I mean, anyone out there, any other interpretations of why Marie would stick around with Meursault?
I think she's like playing the game a little bit for herself in a way, because I feel like deep down, if she like actually really loved him too, she would not stay with him. Like she would be bothered, like Brooke said.
Yeah, yeah.
But I also agree like with what you said about like maybe like saying I love you is not his love language, but like showing her.
Right. Right. And how much is she, again, you know, we talked about where does meaning come from? Is meaning sort of implicit in the world, or do we foist meaning onto a meaningless universe, you know? So existentialism, especially with Camus is really into absurdity, and we'll kind of break that down a little bit later on Friday. But in an absurd universe, basically the universe itself, this is the definition of absurdity. The universe itself is meaningless. There is no objective meaning to the universe, but we want it to have objective meaning. We want the universe to be meaningful. We want our lives to be meaningful. We want us to be meaningful, you know? And so what happens, that's where this absurdity happens, that we are these creatures that very much want this universe to make sense. We want it to be rational. We want there to be a cause and effect. We want that cause and effect to be clear, you know, we want there to be clearly defined rules. And if we follow the rules, everything's going to be okay. We like to have control. We like to, you know, we want all of this, right, in this universe. And then the universe is sort of like, sorry, I'm not going to provide that for you. And so absurdity is that disconnect between what we really want and what we can never, ever get from the universe. And so for her, maybe part of it is that Marie is also playing the game by imposing meaning on everything that Meursault is doing and saying. And she laughs when she says, oh, you know, no, I don't think I do. I don't think I do love you. And she sort of laughs. So maybe in her mind, she's like, oh, maybe he's joking, you know, or maybe he's just like Kyle, you know, like maybe she's thinking the same lines along with Kyle, like, the emotions are really there. He's somehow broken. I'm going to heal him. I'm going to help him find his emotions and then express his emotions in a healthy way. Like, I mean, how many, I'm not saying every woman, but I think there are a lot of women out there who like projects, right? They like to fall in love with men whom they can fix. I mean, it's like the new moral tale of Beauty and the Beast. You know, the original tale for Beauty and the Beast before Disney messed with it. The original tale was basically one for aristocratic daughters, you know, daughters of wealthy merchants who needed to marry into an aristocratic family. Typically in European countries, this happened because the aristocrats were not making a whole lot of money. And so they would marry into a very, very wealthy daughter from a merchant class and everything would be fine. And you can see, because, you know, the original was, look, this beast is really ugly, but he's truly good on the inside. And if you can just recognize that, then everything's going to be fine, right? So you're telling your young, beautiful daughters, marry this old, ugly, you know, aristocrat and everything's going to be fine. It's good. But Disney came in with Beauty and the Beast and it changed, right? I mean, the Beast was ugly on the outside and ugly in the inside. And what did Belle have to do? She had to figure out how to help him express his sweeter, kinder emotions, how to be more empathetic, how to be a sweeter, kinder beast. And when that happened, then he changed, you see? And so that's the message. That's the message that young women get a lot is men are a project. And there's like some fixing that needs to go on, that we can help them and heal them. So who knows for Marie, maybe that's part of it. Maybe she's like, oh, he seems unaffected by his mother's death and he says he doesn't love me, but I think the emotions are there somewhere. And maybe if I just like love him enough, those are, I can help him, I can heal him. But we don't really know, right? And at the same time, he's not at all curious either about why she's sticking his little, he seems a little surprised, like, oh, okay, she laughed and then she kissed me. But he's not particularly curious. He doesn't ask her a lot of questions about herself. So I agree that he, and that the notion like they don't really know each other, so it's too early to say I love you. And yet he doesn't seem to be particularly curious about her either, right? I mean, he doesn't say that he's asking her a lot of questions or anything. He's just letting her be. And so it kind of, for me, this really questions, and I hate to sound so cynical, but it really questions what love is. And I think we've been talking about that a lot in this class. What truly is love, especially sexual and romantic love? Because again and again and again, in all of these pieces that we're reading, this idea of love is really being questioned, man of God and no exit. This idea that who are you really falling in love with? Is it really this other person? Or is it your projection of who you think this person is, right? Are you really falling in love with the reflection of yourself in your lover's eyes? Or is it really, really your lover that you're falling in love with? And think about your own experiences when you've fallen in love with somebody. And then later on, you were sort of like, that person wasn't who I thought they were. It's sort of like, well, yeah, because those initial passionate feelings, are they really for this unique subject and individual, or is it mostly this kind of mirage? And I think this novel is questioning it. Meursault's not playing the game though. He's not falling in love with a mirage of who he thinks this woman is. She's in his life. He likes to look at her. He likes to have sex with her, and he's going to take that as it is. He's not going to foist any more meaning on that than he feels necessary, which is totally flies in the face of every romantic comedy out there ever. So sorry, I don't mean to sound so cynical, but there you go. What about Raymond? What about his relationship with Raymond? We talked about it a little bit on Monday. Yeah, Alexia, is it love or sexual attraction? And I think clearly for him, it's sexual attraction, and he's not going to pretend that it's love. And again, I'm just going to throw this out real quickly. Okay, I remember, so I went to college in the 90s. In the 90s, y'all, were crazy times. I'm just saying, like, there was ask your parents if they went to college in the 90s, because it was like, okay, I'm just saying, it was crazy. So I had a lot of friends who were, he would go out to a party, maybe get a little drunk, sleep with a guy, and then come back. And suddenly it was like, oh, did you see him? I think he's really into me. I think I really, maybe not love, but man, I think I could really like him. I think he's the one and everything else. And I'm looking at them like, what? Like, it was almost like they couldn't be honest with themselves that really all they wanted was to have sex. Like they had that, to them, they had to wrap up that sexual act in several layers of romance and several layers of emotional baggage that didn't, from my perspective, didn't seem to exist at all. Does that make sense, everybody? Like, they couldn't just have sex with a person. They had to wrap it up and make a narrative and make a story and fill it with, I slept with him because we were really attracted to each other. I slept with him because, he's, he's so cute and he seems really nice and blah, blah. Like it couldn't just be sex. It had to be romance. It had to be love. Mirso's not playing that game. All right. What about the shooting of an Arab? How did you all deal with that? What is going on with the shooting of an Arab? Anybody want to join in? How did you? Yeah, Olivia, thank you.
I thought a really big part of that was understanding what was happening with his like physical state and how like the sun was blinding him. Like what is Kimu trying to symbolize with that, and how like it's almost like he can't focus, and that's his excuse for shooting Kimu. I'm a little fuzzy on what the like sun beating down on him symbolized. Maybe it's society trying to make him play the game. I don't know, but that's what I thought.
Yeah, it's so weird, right? Because the way it's described, you know, the Arab has a knife, Mirso has a gun, the sun is beating, it's really hot, and then he shoots. Let's read that passage because it's just so strange. And let's see if we can, like, what is going on? Okay, this is on page 58. It occurred to me that all I had to do was turn around and that would be the end of it. But the whole beach, throbbing in the sun, was pressing on my back. I took a few steps toward the spring. The Arab didn't move. Besides, he was still pretty far away. Maybe it was the shadows on his face, but it looked like he was laughing. I waited. The sun was starting to burn my cheeks and I could feel drops of sweat gathering in my eyebrows. The sun was the same as it had been the day I'd buried my mom. And like then, my forehead especially was hurting me, all the veins in it throbbing under the skin. It was this burning, which I couldn't stand anymore, that made me move forward. I knew that it was stupid, that I wouldn't get the sun off me by stepping forward. But I took a step, one step forward. And this time, without getting up, the Arab drew his knife and held it up to me in the sun. The light shot off the steel and it was like a long flashing blade cutting at my forehead. At the same instant, the sweat in my eyebrows dripped down over my eyelids all at once and covered them with a warm, thick film. My eyes were blinded behind the curtain of tears and salt. All I could feel were the symbols of sunlight crashing on my forehead and indistinctly the dazzling spear flying up from the knife in front of me. The scorching blade slashed at my eyelashes and stabbed at my stinging eyes. That's when everything began to reel. The sea carried up a thick, fiery breath. It seemed to me as if the sky split open from one end to the other to rain down fire. My whole being tensed and I squeezed my hand around the revolver. The trigger gave. I felt the smooth underside of the butt, and there in that noise, sharp and deafening at the same time, is where it all started. I shook off the sweat and sun. I knew that I had shattered the harmony of the day, the exceptional silence of a beach where I'd been happy. Then I fired 4 more times at the motionless body where the bullets lodged without leaving a trace. It was like knocking 4 quick times on the door of unhappiness. Yeah, and there's not, I mean, what's so, Olivia, like what you mentioned is the overall emotion here is not necessarily of fear, and it's not necessarily of regret, and it's not necessarily of guilt. It's like the feeling of just the physical oppressiveness of the sun and the salt and what's happening in his like physical body. How did you guys deal with that? What does that mean to you? How do you connect it with everything else that we've talked about so far? And there's no wrong answer here because I don't know. I'm not sure either. Every time I read this novel, I'm like, I still don't know what to do with this passage. Yeah, Wade, you're absolutely right. It is part of the inspiration behind Bohemian Rhapsody and the killing of a person and throwing life away for no particular reason. Yep. Yeah, nice job, Wade. And so help me out. Help me try to figure this passage out. What is going on with, again, that sort of sensual descriptions of feeling the sun and feeling the sweat and blinding his eyes and turning around to go back to the Arab. Why is it described this way, this shooting? And let me throw it this way. If he were, this is coming from first person, right? So the other novel that we read, or novella that we read, which was directly from a first person perspective, was Notes from Underground. And it's kind of interesting to note that with both of these. And I think on the discussion board, I asked you to contemplate, the Underground Man said that it's almost impossible, right? It's almost impossible to write an honest and transparent account of a person's life, especially from his or her own perspective. So it'd be almost impossible for me to write about my own life from a transparent account, because we are so, as human beings, we so much want to alter our tale. We want to distort what we've done. We want to explain or justify what we've done. If Meursault were the kind of person to play the game, how would he have described the shooting of this Arab? Does that make sense? If he were somebody who wanted to flatter himself or put himself in a positive light, how would he have described the shooting of this Arab? Just like if he played the game with Marie, he would have said, "Sure, I really like you." Who described their Arab as making the first action towards him and that it was self-defense? Olivia, yes, absolutely. Yeah. If he were somebody who was trying to excuse or justify what he had done, then he would have probably explained things like, he made the first move, he had a knife, I feared for my life, he had beaten up my friend, he was an Arab, and so, you can't trust those Arabs, right? Like those Muslims, man, they make trouble. They were after us, they'd followed us, they were harassing us. Does that make sense, everybody? He would have gone back to look at the cause and effect. Oh, this is, my friend Raymond, and I was protecting my girlfriend, and I feared for my life. And he would have imposed all of this meaning onto that action. He would have imposed a kind of cause and effect that would make kind of logical sense to the readers or to himself, right? And so, but he doesn't. What seems to be the overwhelming emotion here? Annoyance. He was annoyed. He was annoyed by the sun. He was annoyed by the tears. He was annoyed by this Arab. He was annoyed that, he was sitting there and it was just, he didn't want to be there. That seems to be the overwhelming emotion here, annoyance. And I want to go back to the very first couple of classes that we had with Sart. And do you remember that class discussion that we had when he talked about the monstrous spontaneity that is ourselves, that humans, being for itself includes this kind of monstrous spontaneity, and that we're always kind of afraid of our monstrous spontaneity? Those are those thoughts that come to you when you don't have the kind of like the ego is not involved, like when you kind of turn off. Does that make sense? Do you remember, everybody? Like you're driving and some jerk is driving really fast and you're like, I'm going to swerve in the lane. That happened to me yesterday. I'm driving along and I could see this guy like vroom, 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 vroom. You know how I'm talking about, like just a jerk. And I was like, I'm gonna suddenly swerve in that lane and hit him. Like, where did that come from? Everybody, like, I would have died in my crappy little Toyota, but it was one of my thoughts, like, I'm gonna do it. Like that monstrous spontaneity, those were annoyed. I mean, think about how often when you're just annoyed with somebody, you will do something, you will say something that is just absolutely monstrous, I think about that with my husband all the time, my children all the time. Like it's not pretty. We do a lot of harm when we are, quote unquote, just annoyed with other people. And that seems to be the overwhelming emotion here. He's just annoyed with everything. It seems really, really oppressive. And he has a gun and he squeezes the trigger. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of conscious, this is the right thing to do. It doesn't seem to be a lot unconscious of this is the wrong thing to do. There doesn't seem to be a lot of planning here. It doesn't seem to be very premeditated. It's just, it was there and he shot it. Yeah, his reaction was to murder him. I know, Olivia, like, and this is part of the hard part about this novel, like I said before, is that, you know, here we have this man who, because he refuses to play the game, is kind of like a blank slate, you know, like he's not doing a whole lot for us to be able to make a lot of I mean, and so what we try to do is like, well, maybe he's this, maybe he's got a mental illness, maybe he is stuffing down his feelings, maybe this, like what is frustrating for readers is that we try to supply the meaning to these actions that seem meaningless because he's not supplying any meaning for us. He's just saying, this is what happened. This happened, the salt was in my eye, the gun was in my hand, I pulled the trigger, and then I pulled it 4 more times. And there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of cause and effect here. It's just this, he's describing it like this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. And yet for all of us, we're like, that's not good enough, right? We need a reason here. We want to know why. We want to have some kind of understanding. But why do we do that, everybody? Why is it so important for us, so necessary for us, that and so destabilizing for us that he doesn't provide that here? And by the way, he's never going to. He is never going to tell us why he killed this Arab. Why is that so destabilizing? Why is that so frustrating for us? I'm gonna drink.
I think it's because we want like justification or like reason for what he did. I mean, that's kind of like the first thing that everyone wants to know is like, why did you do it? And it's just kind of shocking to see that someone who's kind of almost calculative has no reason for what he did.
And why, but why do we need to have a reason, George? Can I dig a little deeper? And you're like, because we like to have, I mean, why do we need reasons for things that happen?
I guess we just like to know what's going through someone's mind, what like brought them up to do what they're going to do, like what started it, what caused it maybe.
Good. And why, again, I'm going to dig deep. Why is it important for us to know the causes?
I don't know if maybe it's to relate to ourselves, to see if like, to kind of compare with ourselves to see if we're like them.
Good. And so I think partly, I mean, I think George, you're hitting on it, right? Like this starts to play with the question, is every one of us capable in a moment of just unthinking annoyance of hurting people? And why? Because they're there and maybe you haven't eaten and you're hangry and somebody does something and you hurt them, right, George? Like there isn't any more reason than that because they're there. I mean, think about Salamano and the dog. Why does he hurt that dog? Because the dog is there. You see what I'm talking about? And so I think part of the reason why we are so destabilized by him not supplying us with a reason is that we start to think, are we like that? Do we hurt people? Do we have that kind of monstrous spontaneity that you know, people who go out and kill other people, we want to think that there's a specific cause, right? That there's a specific reason and a specific cause. Why, everybody? Let's dig down deep because we like to control the universe around us. And if we can get to a reason, then we can get to, well, maybe we can stop it and maybe we can make sense of this and rationalize it. And then maybe we can keep these completely seemingly arbitrary things from happening to us. I mean, I hate to say it, but every time, even in my own life, what I see is that, especially with this COVID-19, you know, there's, oh my God, if somebody gets COVID and there's a lot of finger pointing, well, what did you do? Who did you, like, what bad actions did you do? You did, because we want to think, okay, in this crazy pandemic, you did something to deserve this. Do you see what I'm talking about? You did something to deserve this. You screwed up somehow. And that's why I'm going to stay safe, because I'm not going to screw up like you did. There's a lot of judging going on with COVID-19. There's a lot of feelings like I can control myself and my loved ones getting sick if I just do X, Y, Z. Does that make sense, everybody? And if we can, like, everyone who gets sick, if we can, like, oh, well, they must have been a Trump supporter, or they must have done this or that or that or that. What we're trying to do is control this virus that has no logic. It has no reason. This virus is just going to do what this virus is going to do. And what does this virus want to do? It wants to infect us as much as possible and replicate itself as much as possible. And it doesn't give a crap if you sanitized your hand and wore your mask, you know, like it just doesn't. If it gets a way in, it's going to get in there, people. But we are like, so as people, we're like, okay, but if I do these steps, if I do X, Y, Z, I'm going to be safe. And the people I love are going to be safe. You see, like Anna in Love, like if I just do my duties and make dinner every night and make my kids clothes, and, you know, like I'm going to control this completely fragile bodies we're walking around. Because there has to be, this universe has to be reasonable. And there are rules. And if I know the rules and I follow the rules, things are going to be okay. You see what I'm talking about? And when somebody does something like this, so monstrous, killing another person, then it's like, we need to know the reason. We have to justify it someplace, somehow. He's sick. He's mentally disturbed. He had a grudge. He felt unsafe. There's a reason, because it's just too scary to think that this universe is arbitrary and that this universe is meaningless. And none of this really matters anyway. Like we can't like, that's not, we don't want to go there. So I think part of it is that so I think part of what's so destabilizing is that Meursault is not giving us that comforting story, those comforting lies that we often use ourselves to justify monstrous things that we do, you know? Like my friends with their 2-year-olds, I have to admit, I have 2 easy kids. My sisters tease me all the time, like, you're not a mom. You have no idea what it means to be a mom. Your kids are like perfect. I'm like, yeah, they kind of are. So my kids were not fit throwers ever. And partly it was because Laura, I think you and I are the same. I can't imagine you as a mom putting up with fits. That's all I got to say. If your kids are having a temper tantrum, I'm thinking Laura's going to be like, no, that's not going to fly. Is that right, Laura?
I'd be like a clone of my dad. Whenever I crossed him, it wasn't go to your room. It was drop and give me push-ups.
I love it. Yeah, I was a big fan of The Nanny. So I was like, naughty stare. You're doing the naughty stare. And it worked. It worked great. My kids were like, they were perfect. But my friends, their 2-year-olds would come over and throw a fit. And what did they say? Oh, it's probably because you didn't sleep well last night, or I didn't give him a snack, or this or that, or this or that. I'm like, or he just wants to throw a fit. You know, like your kid just likes to throw a fit. Like again, it's so much easier and nicer if we can wrap everything up with a cause and effect. Why? Because then we can control it somehow. We've got that power. So let me read some of this over here. It says, maybe he saw the Arab as in the way of his happiness. He had a moment of happiness on the beach. Beautiful. Yeah, Nick. Like sometimes it's that. And that's the scary thing, right? Like that is so much scarier to live in a world where people sometimes act on these monstrous, spontaneous feelings without any type of reason. That kind of universe is really, really scary for us to live in. And that's why anytime something like this happens, we search, even if we have to impose ourselves, we search for a reason, we search for a motivation, because it's too scary to think that that's the world we live in, right? It's just too scary. I do this all the time. When I'm faced with something that I can't quite understand, it's like this need, right, Nick, to find a reason. Nick is a scientist, you know, he's all about the cause and effect. He's all about objective, there must be a reason. So Nick, I'm sure dealing with some of this literature for you is like, what is going on? Especially now because there's no reason except the Arab was like standing in the way of his happiness. Yeah. Yeah. What's going to be interesting the next couple of reads is how the rest of society kind of deals with this crime. Because I want to lay this out for you. The Arab had a knife, right? We're in a country, this takes place in a country where Arabs are second-class citizens. So everyone out there, how would you usually think typically in a court system, like let's throw this in American, let me just give like a not a perfect equivalency, but close. A white man shooting an African-American back in, let's say, the 1950s or 1960s. How would that usually play out in an American court of law? Let's throw this even in, yeah. How would that usually play out? Good tea. Oh, Nick, this class actually made me slightly like reading. I'll take it. I will take that as a win.
I think that the white man will probably get away with it.
Thank you, Autumn. And Autumn, why? Why historically have white men gotten away with killing Black men?
Because Black people were second-class citizens and their lives didn't matter.
Yeah. And so moving forward through this novel, if at any point Meursault were to play the game, we would think he would get off. Does that make sense? The Arab had a knife. Raymond was beaten up. I mean, Raymond's not a great guy, but Raymond was beaten up. So we'll see. In the face of saving his own skin, will Meursault play the game? Does that make sense, everyone? I mean, at this point, what has been at stake if he doesn't play the game? Maybe the people at the retirement home kind of give him like, oh, okay. Marie might not have sex with him anymore. I mean, the stakes are pretty low for Meursault right now to not play the game. But the stakes are going to get really high for Meursault not to play the game. And so that's the question I want to leave you with right now is how do you think he's going to react when, you know, he gets arrested for killing this Arab? Because as Autumn says, it would not be difficult for him to offer the kind of motives or justification for this to kind of disappear. It wouldn't be hard at all. It's happened way too many times. Think about Emmett Till, think about, well, there's just too many examples, unfortunately. All right, so Friday, let me ask a couple of, Olivia, you gave a lot of great questions for Friday. Do you want to do a Zoom? Do you want to do a discussion board? I think you said a Zoom, right?
Reagan and I agreed that we would rather do a Zoom.
Woohoo! Okay, so on Friday, I'm gonna say hi to everybody, Olivia and Reagan, and then I'm leaving it to you. I'm just gonna sit back and relax, and maybe I'll turn off my camera and make funny faces, and we'll see. So it'll be all up to you. I'll get those questions up for the discussion board. There are a lot of great ones, so I won't have everyone answer everyone, Olivia, but we'll figure it out. You guys are great.
I just needed to. I just need. Yeah, we didn't know how to dwindle them down, so we just.
There's some. I say let's just do them all. Like, let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, but are we doing the whole presentation, or the whole Zoom meeting?
No, we'll just see how it goes. And, whenever you finish, whenever you go through what you want to talk about, then you're done and I'll jump in.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, all right, bye everybody. Oh, I just got a flu shot this morning and My arm hurts. All right, bye-bye, everyone. Stupid flu.